Imagine a single piece of ancient technology, born in a clay crucible in South India over 2 millennia ago. It literally shaped world history. We're talking about a material so incredibly advanced, it dictated the rise and fall of empires, redrew the map of global trade, and inadvertently gave us the microscopic blueprint for modern science. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tracing the absolute butterfly effect of wood steel. It's the ancient supermaterial that, quite frankly, forged the modern world.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off by looking at how they forged this ancient supersteel, then trace the trade hubs and Roman gold. After that, we'll head over to East Asia to look at imperial steel, see how Wootz armed the gunpowder empires, how it actually triggered the maritime age, and finally, how it sparked the scientific revolution. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Forging Ancient Supersteel. To really grasp the global obsession with this material, we first need to understand exactly how it was made, going all the way back to the mid-1st millennium BC.
So, the word Wootz, it's actually an Anglo-Indian corruption of Dravidian words like the Kannada Ukku or the Tamil Urukku, and both of those literally translate to melt or dissolve. And honestly, that word, melt, is the absolute key to this whole thing. South Asian metallurgists had mastered something totally revolutionary for the time: liquid phase or semi-liquid metallurgy happening inside sealed clay crucibles. This brilliant technique allowed them to produce a highly homogeneous, completely slag-free alloy.
You can really see the sheer structural disparity of the era when you look at it like this. On one hand, you've got ancient Indian Wootz boasting an ultra-high carbon content. We're talking 1.0 to 2.1%, achieved through fully liquid fusion. This gave the steel phenomenal tensile strength and incredible edge retention. Now compare that to medieval European iron. It had an exceptionally low carbon content, less than 0.1%. Because the Europeans were making it through solid-state reduction in these open bloomery furnaces, the iron was just full of brittle slag inclusions. It was relatively soft and super ductile. So Indian Wootz was literally the premier advanced material of antiquity. No contest.
Section 2. Trade hubs and Roman gold. Because of this massive technological gap we just talked about, Wootz became a highly sought-after monopoly. And that demand? It fueled some incredible global trade networks. Take a look at this number, over 1 million. During the classical era, the Kingdom of Chera, which is in modern-day Tamil Nadu and Kerala, held a strict monopoly on this so-called Syric iron. They were exporting it in droves from bustling coastal ports like Muziris. Greco-Roman merchants were trading staggering amounts of wealth just to get their hands on these high-carbon Wootz ingots. And we know this for a fact because archaeologists keep discovering these massive hoards containing literally millions of Roman gold and silver coins all throughout Tamil Nadu and Kerala. The Wootz trade wasn't just a local industry. It was a massive engine for global wealth transfer.
So you might be wondering, who is actually making all this steel? Well, it was manufactured in these specialized urban centers, places like Konasamudram in Telangana. And the socioeconomic setup here was really fascinating. The local Kamari, the blacksmiths, weren't just seen as common laborers. Not at all. They were integrated into highly elite guilds known as the Panchananavaru, working right alongside goldsmiths, sculptors, and carpenters. Their craft was deeply spiritual, too, involving these elaborate rituals centered all around the goddess Mamamaye. This industry was so vital and so lucrative that foreign merchants from as far away as Isfahan actually set up shop and lived locally in these Indian towns. Why? Just to directly supervise the Wootz production for export. That's how important it was.
Section 3. East Asia's Imperial Steel. Let's move the narrative east for a bit to see how this builds. Over in East Asia, Wootz, which they called Binti, completely dictated regional diplomacy and military strategy.
I absolutely love this quote. Other dynasties are like ordinary iron that eventually rusts, but the Lao Empire is as resilient, unbreakable, and eternally sharp as Bintiye. During the 10th to 12th centuries, the nomadic Khitan-led Lao dynasty held this crucible steel in such high esteem that they literally named their entire empire after it. Lao actually translates to Bintiya in the Khitan language. It was a profound symbol of their military superiority. They honestly believed their empire was as unbreakable and eternally sharp as high-carbon crucible steel.
Now, we actually see two very different approaches to harnessing this metallurgical power. On one side, you have the Yuan dynasty, who established the Mongol Bintiju barrage. This was a highly centralized state bureaucracy. They literally forcibly relocated Muslim and Persian master metallurgists all the way to Beijing. Their main goal? Mass-producing industrial-scale weapons to maintain absolute Mongol military hegemony across Eurasia. But then, compare that to the independent Coromandel trade nodes back in India. These were totally decentralized independent mercantile ports, run by those local elite Khmeri guilds and merchants. Their goal wasn't world domination, it was simply maximizing export profits to a global market that just couldn't get enough Wootz.
Section 4. Arming the gunpowder empires. Let's shift our focus to the Middle East, because those exact Coromandel exports were about to arm some of the most powerful forces in history.
Millions of these semi-spherical Indian Wootz ingots flowed via the Persian Gulf directly into cities like Isfahan and Damascus. And it was here that master armorers processed those ingots into the iconic high-performance curved blades we know today as legendary Damascus scimitars. Because the steel was just so incredibly strong, they could forge blades that were exceptionally thin, super lightweight, and heavily curved without any fear of them shattering in combat. This specific metallurgical advantage completely underpinned the lightning-fast cavalry tactics and the overall military dominance of the Safavid Persian Empire.
Section 5. Triggering the Maritime Age. So what exactly happens when access to that world-changing material gets cut off? Well, it forces a massive global shift in strategy. By the mid-15th century, the geopolitical map undergoes a massive shift. The Ottoman Empire rises to power, and in 1453 they conquer Constantinople. This effectively blocks European access to those crucial overland Levant trade routes. Islamic middlemen then stepped in and started imposing severe duties on both spices and South Indian Wootz steel. It was a complete commercial stranglehold. And here's the crazy part. This exact blockade directly triggered the European age of exploration. Desperate to bypass these blockades and get around those crazy taxes, European powers took to the sea. This is exactly what led Vasco da Gama to sail all the way to India in 1498. He was actively seeking a direct maritime path to the source of this incredibly valuable industrial raw material.
Section 6. Sparking the Scientific Revolution. Once Europe finally managed to secure that direct maritime access to Wootz, it kicked off our final ripple effect, a scientific awakening that literally helped drive the Industrial Revolution.
When European cutlers finally got their hands on these imported Indian Wootz ingots, they were completely baffled. If they tried using their standard European forging techniques, like heating it to a white heat, the ultra-high carbon steel would simply crumble right under their hammers. It made no sense to them. But this mystery provoked massive scientific inquiry. In 1795, a guy named George Pearson conducted the very first chemical assays on Indian steel. Later on, the famous Michael Faraday actually started experimenting with alloys just to try and replicate Wootz, which inadvertently kick-started modern alloy metallurgy. And then you have Henry Clinton Sorby, who put polished Damascus blades under an optical microscope and ended up discovering the microscopic phases of steel. So literally, in their attempt to reverse engineer these South Indian specimens, European scientists birthed modern metallography and solid-state physics. It's wild.
And get this, modern science is still learning from Wootz today. Back in 2006, researchers were analyzing a Damascus saber and they made an astonishing discovery. Ancient Indian metallurgists had inadvertently invented nanotechnology. Seriously. Trace transition metals, like vanadium, found in the South Indian ore, actually acted as catalysts. When they heated this ore with woody biomass inside those sealed crucibles, it generated reactive hydrocarbon gases. At high heat, this catalysis literally created multi-walled carbon nanotubes. And during the slow cooling process, ultra-strong cementite nanowires grew inside those microscopic carbon cylinders. It is a wildly sophisticated natural composite created over 2 millennia before modern science even had a word for it.
To truly grasp the gravity of this material, we kind of have to ask a counterfactual question. What would have happened to global history if the South Indian Wootz trade had been completely restricted? Like, what if this one specific material just never left the Indian subcontinent?
Historians actually call this the paradox of absence, and the implications are absolutely staggering. Just look at the geopolitical impact. The highly mobile Safavid military cavalry, it would have likely collapsed without those lightweight curved swords. Without Wootz, those Islamic empires would have been forced to rely on heavy, straight European-style iron swords, which would have completely altered the outcomes of history's most decisive battles. Meanwhile, over in the West, European metallurgy would have completely stagnated. Without the physical mystery of those South Indian specimens to study, the discovery of modern alloy metallurgy and phase theory would have been severely delayed. The whole drive to crack the Damascus secret is what pushed the reinvention of crucible steel in Britain. So without Wootz, the technological momentum of the entire British Industrial Revolution would have slowed way, way down.
So the next time you're looking at a steel bridge, or even just a surgical scalpel, remember exactly where that blueprint came from. A single clay crucible in ancient South India didn't just melt iron. It quite literally forged the boundaries of empires, redrew the map of global trade, and provided the microscopic foundation of modern science. It kind of makes you wonder, right?
What other ancient technologies are just sitting out there in the archaeological record, waiting to teach modern science a thing or two? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.